Hello there, this is Steve Lynskey, face to face on OneWrestling.com, and this week we have a very special guest. He's just been the author of a new book in the wrestling world by Bob Hardcore Holly. It is #1 in the wrestling charts on Amazon, both in the UK and the US. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Ross Williams. Ross, welcome to the show, mate.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
That's not a problem. So, you've just, could we say, co-written a book, or did you?
I think co-written is.
Co-written
I think
would
Bob,
be the best.
Yeah. I think Bob's story and me taking that and putting it into words that are Bob's words. I think that would be the best way.
Are they really Bob's words? Because
I think Bob speak. I think so. I think it's finding with writing a book of a wrestler. It's my kind of. The key thing I set for myself on this was to make sure that when the reader goes through it, then he hears Bob in that one. And there's certain things that Bob would say that maybe don't lend themselves to being put on paper. I'm not talking about just harsh language, because there's plenty of harsh language in the book. But I'm talking about just the way you naturally speak. If you were to take a transcript of the conversations Bob and I had about the book, then it would be interesting, but it wouldn't flow. It wouldn't read the right way. So my job, the way I saw it, was to take our conversations, get them in a good structured order, make them, a good flow, make them eminently readable, but still make sure that rather than the reader hearing either my words or a kind of disjointed version that they wouldn't actually associate with the way Bob was and the way Bob is. They need to be able to read it and hear Bob's voice throughout it. And I'm pretty pleased with how that's come out.
That's great. So it's #1 selling in the wrestling charts, both in the UK and the USA, which would be fantastic for you and, of course, for Bob. But let's turn the clock back, Ross, because we want a little bit of your background, mate. We want to know, how did you meet Bob and that kind of thing? Let's talk about you, Ross. Because we know, I know you've dabbled in the world of wrestling.
Dabbled is a good word. Dabbled is a very, very good way of putting it, I think. I stuck my toe in the water and got it.
I was just going to say, you dunked your toe in the water, found it was too hot, and made a hasty retreat.
I didn't know. Hang on, I didn't find it was too hot. You're putting words in my mouth now, Stephen. Right, so what I did, ignore him, viewers, ignore him. And that's just a general rule overall. Ignore this man. So the deal was that turning 30, I kind of decided there were certain things I hadn't done yet. One of them was to have a wrestling match in front of an audience. And it was something I've always wanted to do. And at the age of 30, when you're particularly unathletic, as Steve will point out repeatedly that I am, go on, not away. Thank you. Then, it's something that at 30, you haven't got that much time to get on with it. So we got on with it. And the chap I trained with, the UK kid, then he brought a number of American stars over with whom we trained and we did shows with. So I had the fortune of training with the Road Dogg, with Kip, with Billy Gunn, and with Bob several times. It so happened on one of the shows we did, then one of the chaps, a superb wrestler named Leon Shah, rather injured his leg and had to remove himself from the main event. So at the last minute, with about 5-10 minutes before the match started, I was thrown into a tag team match, which I'd never done before, with Bob Holly on the other side of the ring, at which point I asked if we could go over some ideas. And to say that met with a big no would be an understatement. It was met then with terror by me, but I think I prefer the way that Steve tells the version of the match. So I'll turn it back to you, Steve, and because Steve was ring announcing for this one, and Steve saw the look of terror as I walked to the ring, the look of terror as I got in the ring, and the look of terror that stayed in my face throughout the entire match.
Yes, indeed. So as far as I can remember, actually, I remember vividly how it went. Basically, the match started with the UK Kid and Bob Holly. UK Kid they got beaten down, and you decided from your own free will to get in the ring and place yourself in the middle of the UK Kid face to face with Bob Holly.
Tom said get between us, so I got between them.
You got between them.
Did.
Probably not the greatest idea that you could have had, because if you'd have had something in your head that you was going to do apart from just stand there toe to toe with Bob Holly and just stare at him, and then
I did shove him.
You did.
That probably wasn't the best idea either.
No. And then, from what I can remember, I heard, "What the F are you doing?" And then proceeded to hear what can only be described as a thunderstorm of a slap to the side of your head. Your head. Yeah. if anyone's ever watched The Exorcist, when the girl does 360, that's right. Pretty much what happened to the whole of Ross. Yeah. 360. Yeah. And then you got put into a corner, and maybe, I think it was a couple dozen chops.
Couple dozen. It was about 12. I had about 12 chops.
12 chops to the chest, and then I think you tagged out, and I just the poor audience, though, they were in such sympathy with you. Everyone was like, "Ooh, ah," and then all you could hear was a hee hee hee.
That would be Steve
from me. So you pretty much got a good chopping. I wouldn't say you got killed. You didn't get killed. Bob. Well, I'll pass it back to you because, as I say, there's a lot of bad press that goes with Bob Holly.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, one of the things about Bob that people point out when they're talking about him on the internet is how stiff he is in the ring, and some people throw around words such as careless, and the word bully with him, and I don't see that. Having been in that situation myself now, I never felt that I wasn't looked after. I felt that, he does hit hard, but that's just the way Bob works. And from talking to him, there's people out there who work a lot stiffer than he does. Yeah. Not that many people who work stiffer than he does, but Bob wants to make sure that when he connects with you, when he throws a punch in the ring, you can't slide a piece of paper between the guy he's hitting and his fist. And I don't think there's a problem with that. No. The only issue I would have is if he were to do that and it meant that then you couldn't work the next night. And, he doesn't do that. He does look after you. And I think you look at, for example, the Matt Capitelli thing for what it was. A lot of people complain about that one. A lot of people bring that up. But the point I'd make about that, again, having been in the ring with Bob, is in this match, he put me in the corner and he started throwing chops. That's fine. He hit me pretty hard, but it wasn't a big deal. He said thank you after the match. We had a good talk about it. I think it kind of won me his respect, the fact that I
stood there.
Yeah, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I didn't fuss. I didn't act like any form of idiot about it. But if you look, Capitelli wasn't, at this point, he wasn't that well trained, from what I gather, on Tough Enough. And he was in the corner. Bob put him there. He started writhing around.
Yeah.
You're trying to lay boots in on somebody, and you're trying to make sure you don't connect that hard. How can you not connect with something
if it's
that
moving
hard? It's a moving target,
Yeah.
So you've got to stay still. And so that's where I think MTV really bigged that up and made Bob look like a real villain on that one, because it was good for the show. But I think a lot of people then remembered that about him and forget the hang on, he went through, a 16-year career in WWE? And as far as I know, the only person in a Bob Holly match who got injured was Bob Holly.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. And 16 years is a long old time to be employed by one employee.
How many other guys do you know, Steve, that have been with that company for that amount of time, have seen the things that Bob, and this is one of the things that we really thought would be excellent for the book, is that not only did Bob have a storied career and a lot of experiences and can talk about wrestling most of the big guys, but he also was around for everything, the whole invasion, the WCW Monday Night Wars, Montreal. He was backstage at all of these things. And the only other two people I could think who would be able to give you the same insight, really, Hunter and Taker. And I don't see either of them writing a book anytime soon.
No. But there you go. So you've got on with Bob.
Yep.
Obviously after that show, etc.
Yeah.
I'm sure you got chopped one more time that night.
As I was leaving the arena, Steve took it upon himself to deliver one final coup de grace that evening, which I didn't appreciate. I went to chop him back, but he bloody blocked it.
I blocked it anyway. So yeah, but yeah, no, I sat there and I watched, and I think I've even said to you afterwards, that not many people could have taken that kind of, you say punishment, but again, Bob wasn't, a bully or anything like that. He would just worked his normal way, and you just happened to be on the receiving end.
I was the heel. I was the heel.
Yes.
I was playing the cowardly heel that night, so it needed to be the big attraction for the night, for the show, which was Bob, got his hands on me, and beat the heck out of me. There you go. That's what wrestling is, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. So let's talk about the books. Obviously, I mean, does this book go from Bob's childhood, or where does, take us through a little bit about the book?
Sure. The book goes through Bob's whole life. One of the things I think with wrestling books in the past I've been concerned about is you want to make sure you get a good feel for people's lives, but you haven't bought it to have a 200-page discourse on their youth. You buy it because you're a wrestling fan and you want to read about the guy's wrestling career. That said, the first X amount, we talk about his childhood, we talk about him growing up in Glendale, we talk about his move to Oregon, we talk about then his, when he had a child, moved down to Alabama. We talk about his dirt bike racing. We talk about his stock car racing. We talk about his bar fighting to keep a roof over his head. We talk about him wrestling a bear. So Daniel Bryan will no doubt be delighted with that one, given what he's been banging on about recently. But so we go through all of this. So we get to his training process. We get to talk about how he went down to do some jobbing in the NWA, including a match with Ric Flair, which Flair does not remember having. Flair wrestled a lot of guys, but Bob obviously remembers it. I'm pretty confident at this point Flair wouldn't remember Bob, but vice versa, it probably would work. And so we get that. We talk about he had 2 seasons as kind of a pro stock car guy, a pro rally car. Really interesting stuff. And then we get to the WWE section, and we talk. Sorry, my cat's appeared behind me.
I just saw that. Yeah, what the heck? Anyway, go on.
It's a cat. It's not some form of weird alien thing. It might be. I don't know. I'm getting distracted. Right, Bob. So Bob is we get to WWE. We talk about not just the feuds he had, the gimmicks he had, because we go through the Thurman Sparky Plug deal, which he hated. We talk about the bodacious Bob, bombastic Bart, or whoever at that point, kind of the genesis of the hardcore character, and then the run through that one. We talk about the injuries he had, the broken arm with Kurt Angle, the broken neck with Brock Lesnar. We talk about his feelings on MMA, the current wrestling scene. We talk about the times he was passed over for WrestleManias and the WrestleManias he was in. Really interesting stuff. And we talk about the I think anybody who wrestled in the late 90s, early 2000s lost a lot of guys that they knew. And it so happens that Bob was quite close with Eddie, with Chris Benoit. Am I allowed to say that name?
Yeah, well,
and he lost guys that he traveled with, and even down to the point that he was in the ring just before Owen fell on the 23rd of May, 1999. Bob was in the previous match. And so, these are things that, while maybe were not comfortable to discuss, these are things that I think make up part of his career and needed to be discussed. So there they are, for better or for worse.
There you go. Did he discuss coming to the UK at all?
Yeah, we talked about his tours of the UK. He said there was one god-awful ring announcer, really kind of big guy. I can't remember his name. He's a nobody, clearly. But yeah, he laughed a lot, though, when people were getting beaten in the ring. So, yeah, he talked about that at the end. He talked about his independent run.
Awesome.
He talked about going over to Australia, doing some shows in the US, doing his tours over here. Yeah, and...
because he has travelled the world.
He has. He has global wrestling superstar, and you tell him that, and he kind of like scoffs and I give over. No,
I think that's the general consensus. Like when you're in that, if you're on the outside and looking in on somebody, and you think, oh my God, you travel all around the world and etc. etc. To someone like Bob, it's just like, oh, really, another plane? Oh, And it's like, wow, yeah, I'd love your job. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I think it's something that the general reader doesn't get, or you watch wrestling and the general consensus is glamorous job, loads of money, etc., 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 and you don't realize that the 10, 15 minutes a day they're in the ring is almost their time off. And the work is getting to that arena. And obviously, from my perspective of having been a wrestler for a brief amount of time, then I found the grind of getting in the car and driving to a show and going back. And this is like, at most a 2-hour commute each way.
Yeah.
It was annoying me. And I was getting my body isn't reacting very well to this. And you've obviously been through much more than that, Steve. You travel internationally, but Bob traveled globally on this for a hell of an amount of time. And after a while, I mean, it's amazing the guy's in as good shape as he is. To this day, he's got no problems with his knees. Ridiculous. Wow. Ridiculous. He's what? He's 50 odd now, and he's got no issues with his knees or hips. I'm 34, and I've got no ACL. And he wrestled for 16 years. I wrestled about 16 matches. How does that work?
It's just conditioning, mate. It's training, conditioning.
Well, it's conditioning, training, the fact that he's good and I suck.
Yeah. So So the book's out.
You don't have to agree so heartily, Steve. You can at least play along.
Sorry. We tell the truth.
We do.
Yeah. So the book's out. The book's out. I mean, you should have I've got a copy there to show.
Yeah, give me a sec. Hang on. I'll go dig one out from my stash over here.
That's a lovely shirt, by the way.
Thank you. It's I put it on specially for you.
Thanks. So let's have a look at the book.
Hey.
Brilliant. There you go.
This is your copy, Steve.
Brilliant. Is it signed?
No, but I've spat on it in a couple of places.
Awesome. That's what we like to see. So is Bob happy with the book? I mean, we're going to find this out anyway, because obviously Bob's going to be doing an interview with my co-host and friend, Mr. Bill Apter. So, and this is your bit. So, must have been enjoyable for you.
It was. It was.
Can you see you reaching the dizzy heights of, going to Waterstones and things like that?
No, it's been out over here. As far as I know, it might be in some Smiths or Waterstones, wherever. I know it's on their websites, but I haven't done that thing yet where you walk in, you find your own book, and you stand there looking, hey, look, my book. Yeah. It's this. Maybe when I was in my mid-20s, I would have been a bit more ego-driven by this, but I think now it's just a case of it was a job. It was a job I enjoyed greatly, and I'd love to do another one. I'm sure ECW Press would hopefully welcome the idea. There's a few wrestlers I've got in mind for doing another autobiog. There's some stuff. No, not you, Steve. 3 buys. Steve's life. So yeah, I think if there's a book on the UK wrestling industry, which we're in discussions about, Steve, obviously you will be part of that. We've discussed that extensively. So we should be hoping to hear back from them soon, whether that's going to go ahead or not. But I'm sure if they're not keen, somebody else will buy the bugger.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Ross, thank you for joining us. We've got a little bit of background on yourself and the book. Obviously, the flip side of this interview will be the man himself, Bob Holly. So we look forward to seeing you somewhere in the future. I'm sure we'll have you on again, because I'm sure you've got some really good stories you could tell us that I know already, but it sounds better coming from you.
This is the problem. You know the stories, and you're just going to set me up for these things, aren't you? I'll come on and be the buffoon once a month. How's that?
Hey, that's what I do. I'm Bill Apter's buffoon.
So Ross, I'm the buffoon to Apter's buffoon. I'm a third level buffoon.
Exactly. That's a hell of a title. You're the buffoon's buffoon. So
I'm gonna have to go and cry in my bedroom now. You realise?
That's okay. Well, we'll let you go and cry in your bedroom. Guys, thanks for joining us on this interview with Ross and the book. We hope you go out there, buy it, and enjoy it as much as I'm waiting to get my copy in the post so I can enjoy it too. This has been Steve Lynskey, face to face on OneWrestling.com.